You know the drill at this point. I went on a Pikmin rampage in 2023 and 100%ed all 4 main Pikmin games. One of the games that I actually thought was completely screwed over by its console was Pikmin 3. Yeah, Pikmin 3 came out on the Nintendo Wii U, aka Nintendo's Dark Age, lasting from 2012 to 2017. Pikmin 3 came out in 2013, aka one of Nintendo's worst performing years on record. Arguably one of the worst ever, due to marketing and all that jazz, but we're not here to talk about that right now. Maybe some other time. Pikmin 3 was very well received. People actually rate it as one of the top 10 Wii U games for level design, how smooth the game is, and very few complaints were ever made. And this was the game that I was very hesitant to play because you were not playing as Olimar or Louie in this game. Instead, you had 3 new players, and instead of juggling 2 squads like in Pikmin 2, you were juggling 3 little ones, 2 medium-sized ones, or 1 massive squad. That thought kind of intimidated me pretty quickly, but I was really glad that I got over that fear, and I have quite a few things to say about this game. So before we get into the main gameplay, what's the story of Pikmin 3? Well, the planet Kopai, or Kopai, I have no idea how to say that. Well, basically, the planet is booming in population, and with that comes a bigger demand for food. Meaning Kopai is in one huge food crisis and people are starving. Yeah, that's kind of a big problem right there. So, Kopai found a planet called PNF-404, and they sent out 3 adventurers, Alf the mechanic, Brittany the botanist, and Charlie, the captain of the SS Drake, to recover food and basically solve this food crisis problem. But they crashed, as they seem to do a lot in this series. Maybe they should invest in a better ejection system, or a better ship in general. You start the game with Captain Charlie wandering around and discovering yellow Pikmin, which, fun fact, this is the first and so far only Pikmin game in which red Pikmin aren't the first Pikmin that you discover. Anyway, Charlie leads a squad into the caves and, becomes breakfast. We'll get back to him in a bit. After that whole debacle, Alf, the mechanic, is now the focus, and he's gotta reunite with his lost comrades and recover the Cosmic Key Drive, a device that allows them to jump to cosmic speed to return to Kopai once they collect enough food for the planet. Yeah, that's just a little important. We might need that. Alf also discovers the red Pikmin. Like Pikmin 1 and 2, he grows the numbers until there are enough to build a bridge, push a box, and just survive the first day. After Alf manages to get back to the ship, the SS Drake, he gets an incoming transmission from one of his other crewmates, Brittany, saying she made it through the landing in one piece, but is trapped somewhere on PNF-404, and the transmission loses its signal, and as Alf leaves the service for the night, that concludes the very first day of Pikmin 3. Now, one thing that Pikmin 3 does that no other game does is the juice mechanic. Upon entering the ship and leaving the atmosphere, Alf discovers that much of the supplies that they brought with them to PNF-404 were destroyed in the crash except for 3 juice canisters. So, you now not only have to balance what you do in one day, you also have to watch how much juice you have remaining at the end of each day. This was an anxiety-inducing gimmick to me, purely because I dread the insane last-minute hustle. So I knew I was going to have to prioritize gathering up the delicious morsels to avoid certain doom via starvation. AKA one of the top 10 worst ways to die, in my opinion. Why do video games keep bringing out the fear in me? I have no clue. But I will say one thing, I ended up prioritizing fruit a lot more after reuniting with Brittany. One thing I did enjoy about the start of Pikmin 3 is that it doesn't just throw you into the deep end right away and just expects you to figure it out. That was something I was very grateful for. The game guides you in a way to take it slow and figure it out, but in a way where you also don't run critically low on juice. After Alf manages to find Brittany and take down the armored Maw-Dad, now their next big priority is finding Captain Charlie. Remember this guy? The dude from the intro who apparently became breakfast? Yeah, that In the distant tundra, Charlie's signal is detected, and after way too long of trying to find bridge pieces, which is an infuriating process if you ask me, it's time to rescue Captain Charlie. After exploring a little bit of the cave and turning on the lights with yellow Pikmin, you encounter the behemoth Fossbat. This thing is, well, for lack of a better term, creepy as heck. Quick fun fact segment, this is apparently a mutated version of the baby Fossbats. If you don't know what those are, they're those things! Anyway, back to the big bat boy. This is actually the first big boss fight in the game because the Mod Dad wasn't really a problem. It was more of a mini boss fight. This usually takes up about 2-ish days in the game, but for some reason, I was able to beat this thing in 1 day. The speedrun must go on, apparently! Now, I like to say the beginning of the game is actually really decent. It doesn't overwhelm you, it takes its time to show you how to utilize the Pikmin and introduce you to the characters, which is an amazing first step in any game, but especially very important to the Pikmin games. Pikmin 3's gameplay functions just like the predecessors, except this time, instead of gathering spaceship parts in a life or death race, or gathering up treasure to clear out an insane amount of debt by your disgruntled president worker person, you're gathering fruit to solve a food crisis. Every day in this game is going to be a little bit different. You either have to figure out how to get to the fruit, gather up the fruit, fight some enemies, repopulate the Pikmin, and overall attempt to stay alive and keep your Pikmin casualties to a minimum. Sometimes figuring out these puzzles that you will encounter along the way will take an entire day or longer, or hell, even shorter if you either played the game before or are very observant, or just didn't find the puzzles that hard. Some of these puzzles, though, they had me genuinely baffled. But with a little bit of running around and being a loony, I eventually figured it out with my one brain cell. These puzzles were also very engaging. They weren't too difficult, but they also weren't too easy. These puzzles require some trial and error, which is what keeps the games interesting to me, along with the goal of not losing too many Pikmin. Because they're adorable and I don't want them to die under my command! I'm sorry! The Pikmin AI is significantly better than it was in the previous 2 games. The controls here are much more precise and much more clean. Having the ability to have Pikmin be able to charge is insanely helpful, especially when gathering up fruit or taking down the predators of PNF 404. I hated those. The Pikmin in Pikmin 3 are definitely a step up from Pikmin 1 and 2. The only thing that I can really complain about in Pikmin 3's Pikmin controls, throwing them at a specific target is a little bit tricky. There have been many times where I throw a Pikmin, or at least try to throw a Pikmin at an enemy, and it ends up either hitting the enemy in the wrong spot, or I miss entirely, or I throw the poor lad into the wall. More so the second option because I'm bad at aiming these little Pikmin workforce missiles. But compared to the other games that came out before this one, I would say that the Pikmin AI here is at its best. Until Pikmin 4 came around, but that's a topic for another video. Anyway, other than that one complaint about the Pikmin throwing not being precise at first, I don't have many other complaints at all about the Pikmin controls. Also, I discovered the lock feature and I was good to go there. But freehand throwing was still a chore. The graphics in Pikmin 3 are amazing. They are just absolutely stunning. The water is absolutely beautiful, the grass is just so whimsical, but one of my favorite things in Pikmin 3 is the snow and the ice of the cold, distant tundra. This area has to be one of my all-time favorites in any Pikmin game. Not only is it one out of only 3 snow areas in the entire franchise, but it's also one of the most beautiful areas in the entire franchise and the game. This game went for a really pretty HD feel, and I love it a lot. Okay, some enemies look a little bit rough. Looking at you, Toady Boyster, they did you dirty, my man. The areas here in Pikmin 3 are absolutely amazing, from exploring the beautiful lush greens of the Garden of Hope, to the mildly freezing climate of the distant tundra, exploring the beautiful waters of the Twilight River, if you have blue Pikmin, running for your life in the beautiful yet formidable oak. We'll get back to that later. These areas compared to Pikmin 1 and 2 are absolutely massive. There were times where I felt like I was just a literal ant, just waiting to be squashed by whatever decides to turn the corner. There are the typical Bulborbs of various variants here in this game, the puckering Blinlow, bearded Amprat, and a lot of others. But the one that I dreaded the most was the shaggy Longlegs, or any variant of the Longlegs. I hated those things! I swear, there's always one of those enemies that I literally I can't stand for the life of me. Let's see if this trend continues in Pikmin 4. But yeah, the shaggy Longlegs took me a hot minute to figure out how to beat. Sure, I took on the man legs in Pikmin 2, but for some reason taking on Mr. Shaggy over here was much more challenging for my brain, especially considering that you have to take out the hairs on this long spider, and it's kinda freaking freaky. There are a lot of other enemies that have their own challenges and you had to figure out how to get around these suckers. But for the most part, they're honestly not too bad to handle. Definitely easier than Pikmin 1's enemies, at least to me that is. However, in Pikmin 3, the enemy placement felt a bit off, to say the least. It kind of felt like there were fewer enemies running around than Pikmin 1 and 2. At times, it felt like I was walking around aimlessly just waiting for something to appear from around the corner, which put me on edge at times, to be honest. Then there are the bosses. These bosses were honestly some of my favorites and least favorite in the entire Pikmin franchise. Sure, this game has only 6 bosses and 3 optional mini-bosses, but some of them are just plain dumb. To keep this short, my least favorite boss was the Scornet Maestro, and my favorite was the Quaggled Myrclops. The Quaggled Myrclops is actually a tough boss to fight for a few reasons. Number 1, fighting this dude with anything but blue Pikmin is, for lack of a better word, a freaking nightmare! You gotta hit one of the feet until it goes red and the Myrclops will collapse. Then you gotta use the rock Pikmin to bust the crystal open and expose the core in the mouth on the first phase. Ugh. Then you have to continue wailing on this thing's exposed feet until it collapses again. Wham the core, dodge the mouth of death, and do this until the dude croaks, spits out Louie, the agent of chaos and a juice thief, and a giant cantaloupe. Now, the best Pikmin I recommend for this battle is either Winged Pikmin, Blue Pikmin, or Red Pikmin. Obviously, you gotta have some Rock Pikmin to bust open the core at the first start, but then they're useless after that. However, using anything but Blue Pikmin here is going to be a risky gamble in this fight, because the very first thing that the Quaggled Myrclops does is leave a big hole of muddy water in the middle of the arena. And in case you forgot, only the Blue Pikmin know how to swim. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. So if one of your red or winged Pikmin fall into the mud, you not only have to keep an eye on the Pikmin, but you also have to deal with the Myrclops as well. You gotta keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't come in and stump y'all to death. But the biggest problem with the Myrclops is the mouth. The mouth has a hitbox about the size of a dang dump truck, and it's kinda hard to avoid. Scratch that, it's very, very hard to avoid. I struggled a lot with attempting to dodge this nightmare creature and take him out, but the trouble was definitely worth it because at least I didn't have to worry about starving to death thanks to Louie, the juice thief. Anyway, onto the Scornet Maestro. First off, the concept was really good and pretty dang creative, having to rescue Louie from the Scornet hive. But that's just about all the praise that I can give this boss. The execution is a bit broken. Before you get to the Scornet Maestro, you get Winged Pikmin. You know, the cute pink ones. The ones who are overpowered as heck in this game. Along with the Rock Pikmin, yeah, those things are basically required to fight the Scornet Maestro because they're the only ones that can reach it. What the Scornet Maestro does is send its hive members out in a formation, leaving the main Scornet unprotected. You gotta knock this lad out of the air and start wailing on him like there's no tomorrow. Do this about 3 to 4, maybe 5 times until you beat him. Now here's the main problem that I have with this thing. It's just way, way too easy. You can easily dodge the heist formations if you're patient. It's just so easy, and it makes it insanely sad. Also, the fact that you fight the Scornet Maestro right before the Quaggled Mireclops, which is a step above the Scornet Maestro's difficulty level, yeah, that's pretty dang sad. That actually brings me to another point. This game is just sadly way too easy at times. I touched on it slightly during the Scornet Maestro segment, but some of the Pikmin just utterly break the boss fights here, especially the Winged and the Rock Pikmin. These Pikmin, for whatever reason, are just madly overpowered. The other example I can think of off the top of my head is the final boss. The Plasm Wraith was a boss fight that I genuinely really struggled with, until I brought 100 Rock Pikmin with me. Yeah, let's just say that it majorly broke the game. I don't want to spoil too much about this fight, but I will say this. Without the Rock Pikmin, it's 10 times harder, and it is mean. It takes a lot of guts and determination to take this thing down without Rock Pikmin, but it also could be a fun challenge. I know for me though, without the Rock Pikmin, this thing was actually pretty difficult, but enjoyable nonetheless. Now, one thing I did mean to mention near the start of the video is that there are 2 more modes in Pikmin 3 Deluxe exclusively. The first one is called Olimar's Assignment, which you unlock after rescuing Captain Charlie, where you play as Olimar and his food-obsessed Agent of Chaos co-worker, Louie, who are once again attempting to save Hakatate Freight from closing down because this bozo can't manage his money too well. Really should look into another branch of employment there, Olimar. Anyway, Olimar and Louie's segment is basically similar to Pikmin 2's gameplay. Fight stuff, collect nuggets, collect fruit, and attempt to get platinum before the time runs out. That is basically Dandori before Dandori was basically made a thing in Pikmin 4. It's a nice change of pace compared to the running around in an impossible death race if you don't collect fruit. The worst thing that can happen here is you don't get a high score and you gotta try again. That's literally it. Compared to the normal story mode, that's a well-needed break. However, there are only 4 levels, which is kind of disappointing but understandable at the same time. Then there's Olimar's Comeback, which is available once you beat the main story. Olimar and Louie having left their Hakatate ship behind and getting a rather harsh scolding from the president of Hakatate Freight, set off back to PNF 404 to retrieve the ship, and oh crap, its parts are missing. That sounds awfully familiar. But that's all I'm gonna say about it because I really want y'all to go experience it for yourselves and have a good time with it. It's well worth the chaos to get it. Sure, it's tricky at times, but doable. Also, if you really like a good challenge, I would highly recommend you go play this mode after you beat the story mode. So yeah, Pikmin 3 is a brilliant game. Deluxe added 2 newer modes that were just exquisite and gave you a little bit of Pikmin 1 and 2 mixed into Pikmin 3, and I actually enjoy it quite a bit. While it is arguably the easiest game, actually scratch that, there is no argument there, it is the easiest game in the entire Pikmin franchise, and the most broken and the most unbalanced. But despite all that, it has a very unique charm that I don't see a lot nowadays in other games, except for Pikmin 3 and a handful of other games out there. Except maybe Pikmin 4 as well, but we'll get into that another time. Pikmin 3 was definitely a highlight of the Wii U, and a welcome change to the formula after being in hiatus for so long. But yeah, as broken and sometimes way too easy as this game is, it definitely holds a special place in the Pikmin part of my heart. Hey everyone, Embur here. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of this crazy Pikmin video. Also, if you like this video and you want to see more content like this, be sure to like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you'll catch all my other videos. Also, huge thank you to SEKIBAN for making the thumbnail. It looks absolutely fantastic. Anyway, I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye!